The relationship between religion and science is constantly evolving. Advances in genetics and geology have led some to question whether God exists at all. Reason, they argue, trumps religion. But one of the world's top scientists says progress doesn't threaten his faith. Quite the contrary. Here's CNN's Tom Foreman.
For nearly as long as we have walked the planet, life itself has been a great puzzle. Cloaked in magic, bathed in wonder. Then suddenly, within just the past 200 years, science started to unravel the mystery, exposing the secrets of who we are. In the last decade alone, an astounding revelation. Scientists deciphered the human genome, mapping out the tens of thousands of genes that make up the blueprint of humanity.
This is the most important, most wondrous map ever produced.
Dr. Francis Collins is the map maker, director of the Human Genome Project. But to him, the genome is not just a triumph of science. It is a triumph of faith.
It's also a glimpse into God's mind.
You were not naturally religious or faithful as a young person.
No. It was just not something I was exposed to.
As a child, Francis Collins was homeschooled in rural Virginia. Faith never part of his family's tradition. Did it exist in your mind as a question?
Oh, I had glimmers of something, some longing outside of myself, some sense that maybe there was a God up there.
Up there, maybe, but still far from reach, especially from the ivory towers of Yale, where Collins got his PhD.
As an adult, I walked very far away from faith. I went from being sort of vaguely interested, but not really, to becoming an atheist. As a scientist studying physical chemistry, quantum mechanics, I became convinced that everything about the universe could be described by equations.
So what changed that for you?
Well, I changed my life plan from physical science to medicine. And when I went to medical school, the ideas about death and dying, which had been rather hypothetical, became very real.
With a scientist's precision, Collins began a philosophical exploration of the human soul.
All of us human beings have a sense that there is such a thing as right and there's such a thing as wrong. What a curious thing. Where does that come from? Something written within our hearts, universally in humankind, making us different from other species and calling us to be good and holy, pointing us as a signpost, if you will, towards something outside ourselves that is much more good and much more holy than we can imagine.
For him, overwhelming evidence. God was no illusion, no spiritual crutch for the weak and unschooled. God was real. Did you have at some point a born-again experience?
Yes, I did have a moment where I became a believer. And after many months of struggling with whether to make that leap, on a beautiful fall day, hiking in the Northwest with my mind a little more clear than usual because there were not the usual distractions, I felt I could no longer resist. And I became a believer that day in the sunshine and the shadow of the Cascade Mountains.
Each scientific advance is further confirmation of his faith.
Facts of the matter is the universe began about 13.7 billion years ago in this incredible singularity of energy in the tiniest imaginable point the entire universe contained at that moment. How does that get started? We have not observed energy and matter to create themselves.
You're saying that's one of those fundamental questions that science doesn't seem designed to answer.
It does force you to ask the question, how could something like the universe have had a beginning without having a creator, and a creator who's outside of the universe, involved in that event? And that sounds like God.
Science, he says very simply, should not be seen as a threat to Christianity.
To actually insist, therefore, that God might be threatened by what science is teaching us, It seems to me that requires a lot less faith than one should have. If God is the author of all this, and He's given us the chance to discover the awesome nature of His creation, I kind of think He expects us to follow that lead.
Tom Foreman, CNN, Rockville, Maryland.